everyone, and welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm your host, Meredith Dykstra, and this is episode number 157. We've got our resident cellular healing specialist, Dr. Daniel Pompa, on the line. And today, hey, it's just you and I. We don't have any guest experts here, so you're back to being the expert.
Oh, you have.
Hey, I'm happy about that. It's fun. Yeah, it's been a while that it's just us. But Dr. Pompa, you had asked me to schedule this show because we have a pretty important topic that we want to discuss today. And we're going to be delving into diet. Now, as all of you know, there are lots of diets out there that are touted to be the best diet for your health. There's the vegan diet, the paleo diet, macrobiotic diet, which I had subscribed to in the past. And oh my gosh, there's so many diets out there that are telling you they have the answer to fixing all of your health challenges. And we're going to delve into maybe what is the answer today, what the solution is to finding the right diet for you. And Dr. Pompa, you have some pretty interesting answers. So I'm excited to delve into this topic a little bit more.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, when we look at the debate, right, which diet is best? I mean, you know, the vegan people would say the vegan diet's the best, right? It's then the paleo people, the paleo diet's the best. But what if they're all right, right? Well, look, you know, I coined something called diet variation, and I'm going to say AKA feast famine cycles. And you know, it's really something that grew into something even more than I thought, meaning the importance of it to people's health. So, you know, just as kind of where this fits in, you know, we talk about a multi-therapeutic approach, and this is what a growing number of doctors are doing now, right? We have, you know, I always like to put it in context of the three-legged stool. You know, certain genes are getting turned on. That's why we don't feel well. That's why we're developing certain diseases. And a lot of my cellular healing work applies there. And then the other part is that we have certain stressors that turn on our genes. And the cellular detox work applies there. Certain chemical stressors turn on genes. We know that. And then the last leg is the microbiome that we hear so much about, right? And we've learned how much this applies to health. I always say you're not going to fix a microbiome or a gut just by adding probiotic, if it were only so simple. But when we look and we utilize these ancient healing strategies that we can learn from ancient cultures, that's really how, as a growing group of doctors, we're fixing this microbiome issue and the gut issue. So today's topic applies in this leg of the stool of the microbiome, and you know how diet variation, when I say that word, Meredith, most people think I'm talking about eating a variety of food. That's what they think, right? It's not that at all. Diet variation,
variety of food, yeah, of course.
Yeah. You know, that could be diet variation, right? I mean, that's so far, but it really is more important than that. It's utilizing things that we don't have to do anymore, meaning today, we don't have to go into times of ketosis, but moving in and out of ketosis is key. Now, I'm going to make some ketosis people angry, and I did this weekend. I had the privilege with Joe Mercola and myself speaking at the Low Carb USA event. And I'll tell you, if I didn't have Joe go on ahead of me and say how much diet variation changed his life, okay, because it did. Joe was in ketosis, and him and I went on a walk, and he said, you know, I'm losing muscle, and you know, some other things were happening. I said, oh, here's the answer.
How long had he been in ketosis and was not getting results?
Yeah, no, he was getting results, but what happened is it started going the other direction on him. So he started to, like I said, lose some muscle, et cetera, you know, and so just some things were happening. I explained to Joe that it's because your insulin is getting so low, and a couple things happen. When insulin goes low, you actually can fire up gluconeogenesis in the liver, because insulin actually, what it does is one of its most important functions is it actually stops glucose production in the liver. So when insulin goes really low, you can actually increase insulin production. People don't understand that, but that's one thing. However, I would also explain that the body can go into almost a starvation mode, and because the insulin goes so low, and therefore, you know, that can affect thyroid hormone, that can affect other hormones, could affect a lot of things in the body. So by throwing in a carb day, a higher feast day, as we call it, you know, higher carbs, higher food in general, higher caloric intake, you can change that dynamically or dramatically. And sure enough, it worked. So we were at Low Carb USA. Joe told that story, and he said his new book, Fat for Fuel, which is coming out in the spring. I was, blessed to be one of the editors, peer-reviewed. It's a peer-reviewed book, and there was 8, really bright people that were able to peer review that. I'm not putting myself in that category with these guys, but I was blessed enough to be one of the peer reviewers of the book. And I talked in the chapter, and we talked about feast famine cycling, and Joe gave me credit on that. But so we were there, and the low carb people and the keto people, man, they didn't want to hear it. So
you're at the low carb event telling them to eat carbs once in a while.
Yeah, they were a little up in arms about it, but needless to say, we knew what we knew, and we stuck to our guns. But so we know that by
pudding, right?
What's that?
Yeah, I just said, well, the proof's in the pudding. If you're eating a very low carb diet for a long period of time and stop getting results, then, we have to reassess the situation and think, okay, if I keep doing the same thing and I'm not getting the results that I'm looking for, then something is amiss. I need to change my strategy.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. There was a remarkable amount of people there who struggled to be in ketosis, or they were in ketosis and they weren't losing weight anymore or at all, right? Even though they were in. And I talked even about how toxicity plays a major role in why you don't lose weight or why you can't get into ketosis. And I actually started it by one of the ways how I discovered this. And I talked about these people that are in ketosis, or they're struggling to get into ketosis, or they're kind of in and out and they're not getting the result. I said, well, let's just go back to a regular cellular healing diet. Let's bring your carbs up to 100, 150 grams of carbs. That's still a low carb diet, but it's not ketosis by any means, right? In today's standards, it's definitely considered a low carb diet. In my world, I would say it's a really normal, moderate carbohydrate diet at least. But anyways, so we put them back that way, and all of a sudden they start losing weight. And it's like, well, that's odd, because I had them on that diet and they weren't losing weight. Tried to move them in ketosis for 3-4 months. Wasn't happening. Moved them back into the same diet they were on. All of a sudden they start losing weight. It stops though. And then we realized, okay, it stopped. Let me shift them back into ketosis again. Let's see what happened. And lo and behold, this time around, they were fat adapted like in 2 weeks. Very efficient now using fat, losing weight again. So I repeated that a few times. And then I had some of our doctors do a similar thing, and they got the same results. So what I determined was the magic was in the switch. Certain hormonal things happen when we have those major dietary changes that it creates, the body's trying to adapt. Through that adaptation, things happen that we don't even clearly understand yet, hormonally, etc., that we saw this amazing change. So that got me curious, and it kind of led down some other roads. But so, that really is kind of like monthly diet variation, where we're changing diets, or here's another way of putting it, seasonal, diet variation. So what if we put someone in ketosis for 3 months and then moved them out, for 3 or 4 months? Is there anything else that substantiate that? So that's called seasonal diet variation. Maybe we can kind of lay it out. So kind of take them through. I'll let you do it, the different ones, and then you can kind of ask me questions around it. But that's kind of what got me thinking in this area.
So to kind of explain and define diet variation, we're varying our diets. So oftentimes you're using either the cellular healing diet or the ketogenic diet, and kind of shifting back and forth between those two diets, because those are the diets you found to be most successful for most people in decreasing inflammation, balancing their hormones, losing weight. So we're varying between those two diets typically. We're adding in feast and famine cycles, which we'll delve into a little bit more to further promote cellular adaptation and variation. And then we're varying the foods as well, and the meal timings. So there's variation in literally every aspect of what we're eating, when we're eating it, how we're eating it. I mean, there's variation in really every aspect of consumption and diet.
Yeah, exactly. So, one of the other things is this. We know that when someone's, also in this state of ketosis for a long time, right? So I mentioned, Joe Mercola's experience, and we added the feast day in, increasing his carbs, and he noticed that even when he did that, his glucose actually would drop after eating a carbohydrate meal. Well, how's that possible? Well, we kind of explained that, but the point is that, we do get that major drop oftentimes in glucose, even after a carbohydrate meal. But I think one of the big things is this. So we added in a carb day. So this is diet variation where maybe 5 days a week we're doing ketosis. Then we're adding in this feast day where we're actually eating more and eating more carbohydrates, okay? Then we varied even more. We take another day of the week and we fast. So we go dinner to dinner and fast, 23 hours, right? So we have feast, and famine going on in the same week, and then 5 days of a very low carb ketosis diet. That's weekly diet variation. And then I talked about seasonal diet variation, where we're literally being in a diet for 3-4 months perhaps, and then shifting the diet completely. However, even in a ketotic state, I think there's major benefit to adding in these feast days and famine days. Now let me explain why I think, what's happening. So the body eventually thinks it's starving. And I think that, that's what happens. I mean, technically, when you're in a state of ketosis, the body mimics that fasting state. So when you're in it long enough, it could have a tendency to think it's starving, right? So one of those things I always say is, when you eat, you have to eat a big enough meal just to remind the body it's not starving. But when that insulin continues to go down, it could take on, starvation, plans, if you will, or adaptations, one of which is this. The body is in ketosis. You're shifting the majority of the fuel of the cell is fat, right? Cells can use glucose and fat. In ketosis, we're making the cell use fat, mostly as its energy source, 95% at least, right? Energy comes from fat. So therefore, the body is so intelligent. It says, wait a minute, if this is my fuel, I want to conserve it, because the body's always trying to just survive. That's its number one thing to do. So therefore, because famine cycles can come, then I better start holding on to this fat that's so precious better. I better become, more efficient at burning it. So one of the things that it will do is it will even genetically just blunt the insulin receptors. So it's not insulin resistance like a diabetic, but the DNA will literally blunt the receptor, and then you'll be able to store a little bit more fat. The irritating part is that the fat is stored typically where you don't want it. Like I store it right at the bottom of my belly. Women will store it right where they don't want it on their butter legs. You know the story. But the point is that here's what happens. When we remind the body it's not starving and to go ahead and have the freedom to burn fat, when we do that feast day, now all of a sudden the body goes, okay, we're good. Let's burn fat. So let's become more efficient at fat burning. And now it starts burning up your fat again, which is amazing because your energy, you feel that energy surge, and you now are tapping into those fat stores again. You become more efficient fat burner again. So you're able to kick in the efficiency just by biohacking the body's survival skill, really. Throwing food at it in an abundant way just tells the body, hey, okay, we're good. We have plenty of fuel. Go ahead and burn the fat. And it does. So it's really cool, that it works like that. So another example, sometimes people do better, especially thyroid people, because you need insulin to convert your stored T4 hormone to T3. So if insulin gets really low, it'll start messing that up a little bit too. So throwing in 2, even 3 feast days a week works for some people more. So they have these higher carbohydrates 3 days a week and then really low on the other days, and even a fasting day or 2. I like 2 or 3 fasting days a week. So I like to go 24 hours at least 2 or 3 times a week. And sometimes I do 2 feast days. So you can see I really vary my diet weekly. And then of course right now, seasonally, I'm doing this. In the summer, I was probably around 100 grams of carbs on average in the summer. And in the winter, now I am fully in ketosis. I'm experimenting with something new. This is kind of fun because I'm really efficient and fat adapted. I realized when I went back into ketosis, I was in ketosis in 2-3 days. I mean, just like that, which normally would take 3 weeks, right? But because I'm so efficient, I realized I was in. I was just in Florida for a week, purposely came out of ketosis, came back. So I was out for 1 week. I came back, and literally within a day, I was back into ketosis. So now I'm back into ketosis. So I'm looking at even varying it like that, where maybe I'm in ketosis for 2 weeks and I go purposely out for a week, So I don't know. I mean, put it this way, there is magic here in the adaptation. I believe it's optimizing hormones. I believe that there's, so much that happens that we don't even understand with this diet variation. So pretty cool. I hope I probably just created more questions than I even think. So you have to try to figure out what questions they would have, Meredith, to make this simple.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that the definition makes more sense now, and you've clearly explained the why behind it, the reasoning and the importance of it, and a lot of anecdotal evidence as well. So I think it makes so much sense from an ancestral perspective as well. Just when we look at our ancestors, where, food wasn't always consistent. They couldn't eat like we do, or 3 meals a day and snacks, and they couldn't just go and buy food so readily. So their eating schedules were much less, consistent. So it really makes sense that their bodies were forced to adapt. And when they were able to feast, their body could just relax and, oh, I can trust you. I don't need to hang on to this fat anymore. So then they would get leaner, and their bodies would adapt from a cellular level because of that. And then during times of famine too, their bodies became efficient at burning fat when they were in ketosis, so they could have those stores and that energy to get them through those challenging famine times. So I think just diet variation makes such sense from an ancestral perspective. So that's clearly why it works so well, in my opinion. But to kind of get down into the nitty gritty of it, so we've got the what, and now we have the why, but now we need the how, the implementation. So Dr. Pompa, you kind of mentioned a rule. You have the 5-1-1 rule, and I think that's a really awesome strategy for a lot of people to be able to implement. And you wrote about it in your ketosis article on drpompa.com, so you can check that article out if you kind of want a little bit more in-depth explanation of that. But I like how you're explaining that it's possible to vary that as well. So instead of the 5-1-1 rule of 5 days on the ketogenic diet, 1 day fasting and 1 day feasting, that alternation where perhaps 4 days keto and 3 days feasting, or 3 days fasting and 1 day feasting. There's just such beautiful magic variation in that. So you kind of mentioned a little bit about what works best for some people. So do you want to kind of delve into more, maybe some people are watching with different conditions, as to what you would suggest if some other kinds of conditions work better with more carb days, and if they're maybe better for women to have more carbohydrates, or if you can kind of delve into that a little bit more with conditions?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to thyroid, but I would say low adrenal people too. They seem to do better with at least 2 carb days, higher carb days, feast days a week. Let me be clear. I think that though you want to become as fat adapted as you can be, meaning that some people just aren't going to be totally in ketosis where they feel like they're really in this fat burning mode. But I always say, give it a few months, maybe 2 months at least, and then throw in the variations. I mean, some people can do it within a month because they adapt much quicker. But then I would start throwing in the variations, where it's either 2 feast days a week, and, even try 3, so, and again, experimenting with, even more, maybe a week of higher carbohydrates. And when I say higher carbohydrates, let's be clear, healthy carbohydrates. Let's give them, I think this is what people always want, right?
And fries and all that. Come on, Dr. Pompa.
Hey, I want to say this though. Remember when we interviewed Kristen Verde? Remember that? She's the scientist that wrote the book Every Other Day Fasting, right? And by the way, what they were doing is just, they were fasting people for a day, and then they were just putting them back on a standard American diet, which you and I were like cringing, right? But she said, yeah, okay, but it worked. People still lost.
Still getting results.
She said people still lost more weight by that variation than just doing one or the other diet. I said to her, Krista, why? She said, well, I think it's just adaptations that occur in the body. Bingo, right? I mean, it's like, that's exactly right. We don't completely understand it, but forcing the change is actually, where the magic, lies. So, okay, but this is what people really want, I think. Okay, so what do I eat on my high carb days, right? Well, how about sweet potatoes? How about more berries? More shakes with more berries, right? Maybe that's the day you can have a little bit of honey, right? Just, some of those little treats that you would love.
Little maple syrup, some special treats. Yes. And it's so fun too. And I found too, working with people, don't you find that it's so much more sustainable when people are able to implement a feast day, because it's so fun and they can kind of create healthy variations of some of their favorite foods. Maybe they can do a cauliflower mac and cheese, or, a coconut flour pizza crust, or, have plantains or a maple syrup dessert, or, bring that joy back and having some really special treat food that sometimes people feel like they've missed out on for many years or months when they've been trying to follow such a rigid diet.
Absolutely. Well, ultimately, most people watch our show, right? I mean, they struggle with staying on a diet. I mean, they look at you and I and they may get mad, because we're like this all the time. But think about it. When people have some freedom, and we've even done some interviews with food addiction, and he says, no, the best thing to do is give yourself planned days. Actually works even with people with food addiction. So we know that this is even going to help people stay on a better diet. But look at these foods that I'm telling people to eat, right? You can eat more legumes in your diet. You can eat more berries, right? Healthy fruits. You can eat more root vegetables, beets, make more smoothie. I mean, these are healthy foods, right? It's like, so, we know this too. Absolutely. But here's some of the science is showing this too. These food, by bringing in these foods periodically, it helps our microbiome. Remember, this is in the category of ancient healing for the microbiome. So we know, I found research with the American Indians, right, showing that their summer diet versus their winter diet, I'll talk a little bit about that, was magic for changing their microbiome. And it was a big part, they were saying in this article, they were saying because this is really what was one of the big things for preventing diabetes, which we know the American Indians are very prone to diabetes and heart disease. But this variation and how it affected their microbiome, they believe, was a critical component to avoiding this in their culture. And they're not getting it now. So one of the things that was said was, I have some quotes that I wrote down, which I thought were good. It said, the more toward an all year around abundance of food in many populations may have caused overconsumption at times when the human metabolism otherwise would have benefited from more caloric restriction and or greater insulin sensitivity. So what they were saying here is that they believe this is causing disease because we're in this constant food abundance all the time. And that went into another article, and I presented this at my seminar. I just want to kind of show it real fast, if you don't mind here. But this was an amazing article because here it is. I'm going to click on it. Okay, so the article was sorry, I thought I had it. Oh gosh, I thought I had it in this PowerPoint. I'll find it as we speak, but anyways, it was a oh, here it is. I found it. Great. Okay, so it says diet individual responsiveness in cancer prevention. Okay, this is basically the abstract. I'll read a piece of the abstract. Beyond consideration of genetic polymorphisms. Okay, so beyond some of the genetic stuff, the last half century has brought stark changes in lifestyle that departs from normal diurnal cycles of periodic fluctuations in food availability. So just stop right there. What it's saying is that basically we are stuck in a feast mode and that this is potentially causing problems. Thus, modern times may be characterized by being constantly in a feast environment. The cellular consequences may be an increase in risk for several diseases, including cancer. So in this article here, they're basically saying that they're finding that the fact that we're stuck in a feast mode all the time in modern day society is actually leading to disease. I couldn't agree more. Now in this article, they're talking about cancer. In this particular article that I was referring to the American Indians, they were talking about diabetes and heart disease being prevented by forcibly moving in and out of these different diet cycles. The Indians in the winter ate a diet of meats. And I even wrote down what they were eating because I did this homework. I actually went to Wyoming and researched this topic. Elk, deer, antelope were the mainstays of their diet in the winter. The women would trap small game, typically, and the men would go out hunting. In the spring, they oftentimes, or even in the late winter, they ran out of food. Forced fasting, right? It forced a fast. Early spring, they were in between food supplies. And the Hunza people, which is completely another culture, there's something called starvation spring, where they would fast every spring. And then guess what happened in the summer? The American Indians now would start gathering berries, fruits, amaranth, wild onion, rice grass, dandelion, inner bark of the trees, different roots and root vegetables. Their carbohydrate intake soared, actually, So now in this, they talked about how getting more sun in the summer, exposed to more sun, actually helped them with the higher carbohydrate. It made them more insulin sensitive, which means they could handle a higher carbohydrate diet, right? And it also, talked about in the winter, the lack of sun, actually how the higher fats would help them. So now we're making an argument even for seasonally, perhaps we should be varying our diet. Okay, so foods, season, anyways, I'm bringing up a lot of points. Look, I made evidence from science saying, hey, this could be, and I have many other articles here, even with MS, and how diet variation really helped with this. They said that just regular dietary changes in this study didn't help MS. However, the diet variation did. Periodic 3 days mimicking fasting in and out of ketosis actually made a difference. Just dietary changes didn't. So anyways, we look at ancient cultures, we get evidence. We look at studies like this, we're gaining evidence, and I'm gathering more and more. So full circle, who's right? The vegan? Maybe. The paleo guy? Maybe. But the point is, I believe that it's this switch forcing our diets that's really helping our microbiome. It's adapting from a hormonal perspective that forces cellular health and cellular healing. So there you go. We have a growing group of doctors doing this diet variation, utilizing this in strategies weekly, monthly, and we're seeing the results. So the science, yeah, it works.
Yes, it speaks for itself. And kind of thing. So I love the idea of rotate. Feedback?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, maybe, okay, better now. All right, so I'm wondering too, I love the idea of diet variation, but I think there's quite a few people with food intolerances, digestive issues. Maybe they love the idea of eating a lot of different foods, but simply can't digest many foods. I know you've spoken of past clients, Dr. Pompa, when they came to you, they could only eat 4 or 5 foods. So how does diet variation work with that when you literally can't digest or can't tolerate many foods at all?
Well, again, what diet variation also, aka feast famine cycles. So how we got a lot of those people eating more foods is fasting, periodic block fast, right? Whether it's once a month, you do a 4-day fast, even then, partial fast on the back end, every other month. So even intermittent fasting daily, which we're talking about here as a variation, I think it really leads to part of the solution for that as well. Of course, removing toxins at the cellular level. Again, this is a 3-legged stool. We're talking a multi-therapeutic approach, but I think these variations play a role actually as part of the solution. So, let's work with the foods that we know that we are okay with. Look, my wife's calling me during a Cell TV. Is she crazy? You're calling me during Cell TV. I'm doing Cell TV on diet variation. I'll call you back. All right. Anyways, what? Anyways, so I better turn off my ringer because if I know my wife, she'll just keep calling. She'll be like, "What do you mean? What did you say?" Anyway. Yeah. So this is I think that we can work then with the few foods that they're okay with and still do diet variation from even a feast famine cycle point of view. So it's
kind of a modified approach. Yeah. Well, and so you don't think there are any foods that we should always keep in our diet? For example, there are some foods that they say like we should always, have bone broth every day or fermented foods every day. You think we should vary every single thing, or are there things that we can kind of keep fairly consistent?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a problem with keeping certain foods always in your diet, right? I think more of the focus should be on these major, nutrient caloric contents, right? The feast famine cycles. I think that, certain food, increasing the certain amount of foods, right? The amount of fats, the amount of proteins, the amount of carbohydrates, I think that matters more. At least from a clinical perspective, I can speak to that, right? Meaning that we know that far more carbohydrates versus far more fat or not, I think that matters more. Now, if you watch the interview that we did with Jack Kruse, okay, he talked about seasonally eating, right? That, the sun, when, you're getting more sun versus less sun, and foods can adapt to. I don't know clinically how much of that applies. I believe there's truth to it. And people, I'm not the first one to talk about seasonal eating, by the way, right? A lot of people talk about eating foods that are in season, right? So there's nothing new here as far as that perspective goes. And I think there's truth to it. Though clinically, how much just eating different foods seasonally, I don't know. But I know that the macronutrient adjustments matters a lot, especially when we're trying to fix a cell.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. It does, just from the adaptation perspective, and it all boils down to that, is promoting cellular adaptation through good cellular stress.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll keep it really simple, right? We can think about this many ways, but if from a scientific perspective, very simple. Bad cells don't adapt, right? You heard our interview with Thomas Seyfried, who does diet variation for cancer. He's moving people in and out of fasting. He calls it, press pulse. This variation. There's magic here. I'm telling you, from a clinical perspective, we're seeing this. So bad cells don't adapt. The guy who won the Nobel Prize last year, 2016, he won it for his work on something called autophagy or autophage, which simply means that your body gets rid of bad cells. So when we're forcing the body to make these changes, bad mitochondria that produce energy, bad cells don't adapt. So eventually you do it enough, all of a sudden the bad cells are not adapting, your good cells are, and becoming stronger. That's why Tom Seyfried is noticing this with cancer. We're creating bad cells to die. Simple as that. Autophagy, the guy who won the Nobel Prize showed in fasting states why autophagy is one of the big reasons we thrive in health and healing during fasting. Bad cells don't adapt. So is it true with many things? Just switching our diet, ketosis, non-ketosis? Yes. Yes, we're seeing this. So the magic is in forcing adaptation. Okay, weightlifters, exercise people, listen, you guys get it, right? If you do the same exercise day in, day out, what happens? Well, you don't make gains anymore. What if you change the exercise you're doing? You're forcing adaptation. All of a sudden now you're sore again, and now your body adapts and becomes stronger. Every time weightlifters go in the gym, they like to switch what they do, purposely changing that's exercise variation. So, we're doing the same thing with the diet that the bodybuilders knew for years. What else we got from the bodybuilders? Diet. They knew about diet variation too. Why? Because they would do carb days, after they were in like these major, like they were getting lean, and then they would throw carb days in right before competition, and they would get extremely lean and vascular. After a carb day, the day two, even the next day, I am visibly leaner. My body went in and started firing up the fat burning mechanism, and I immediately got leaner. The bodybuilders, they did that biohack for years, so, all we're doing is taking this adaptation and doing it to fix cells.
Yeah, I know. I was feeling that too. I was thinking I love practicing diet variation as well. And I think I had been a little bit too low carb for a while. So I really enjoyed a feast day this past Sunday. So oftentimes for people, they like to just kind of book it on a weekend where, you can really enjoy those feasting foods and you do feel better the next day. I felt better. My energy was better. Sometimes when you're just too low carb or doing the same things for too long, your body, there's homeostasis. It just kind of, gets a little too consistent. So you have to kind of mix it up. But I'm wondering, I'm thinking too, for people to kind of maybe know as far as which kind of style and timing of variation works best. Do you think would be prudent to suggest testing blood sugar and ketones as far as to kind of track patterns and see what kind of might work best for you with fasting and feasting days? Or do you think that's even necessary? Is it results driven?
I don't know that it's necessary for the average person, right? For someone who's sick and they start intermittent fasting, we like to look at morning glucose and ketones and then right before their first meal, because we want to see glucose dropping and ketones rising, is an indication that they're responding. If glucose is rising after 18 hours of fasting, you're in gluconeogenesis. That's an indicator that you need to shorten your fast until you get a little bit more efficient. And that's a strategy that, that we use and teach. But, I think that, no matter what, everyone can benefit from this in some way, and for the reasons that, that we're saying, and I don't want to overcomplicate it for people that you have to test, to do it. I think that if you're challenged, it can help determine your fast. And then even like I said, I guess, to some point, Joe realized his glucose levels were rising, and yet he did what I was doing, kept cutting my carbs, right? Why isn't my glucose going down? We start to see this opposite thing occurring. Well, understanding that insulin's main function really is to shut off the liver's production of glucose. Well, if insulin goes lower and lower, you're not able to do that, and then gluconeogenesis happens just from the production of glucose in the liver. Diabetics, I hope you heard that. So, balancing throwing these feast days at it is a way to really offset the gluconeogenesis of the liver, or your body taking its muscle and breaking it down into sugar, which, again, I think that, that's happening to people all the time as well. So we take the muscle and break it down into sugar. That's called gluconeogenesis. So, again, throwing in feast days like this, break that cycle. So, and then looking at your glucose could tell you if your glucose is rising in a fasting state, change something. So there's a good indicator. So.
Change something. I love that. And for all of you who are watching, who have maybe been following this strict, rigid diet, even if it's a great diet, even if it's the cellular healing diet or a ketogenic diet, vegan, paleo, fill in the blank. And if you're following this diet, not getting results, diet variation is an incredible solution. And it's ancestral. There's historical evidence as well as cutting edge new science that is validating the strategy. So Dr. Pompa, I think it's brilliant, and it's made a change in so many people's lives. So thank you for bringing this information and kind of explaining it in a formula and in a way that we can get it and we can understand it and apply it to our lives to increase our health.
Yeah, maybe we'll attach this episode to the video that I did in Wyoming, because I did a great video. Listen, I have to kind of tell the story, because I didn't get to tell it in the video, right? But my son and I were there, and I said, well, I had been doing days of research on the American Indians, because they have a lot of great history there. And anyway, so I said, okay, today we're going out, we're going to try to find the buffalo herd. I heard they're coming out of the Great Plains, up in Yellowstone, and they were coming down to where we could actually access them. And so we did. And he thought I was nuts. He thought there's no way we're going to find these buffalo. And we're driving, and he's probably, frustrated with me at this point. All of a sudden I see ahead what he was saying, I think that's just a bush. I'm like, I think it's a buffalo. So we drove up. So one turned into many. We literally ran into the buffalo herd, hundreds, there's thousands probably behind them, but and there they were right off the road. So I literally jumped out of the car. He held the camera on me, and you see the buffalo herd behind me. And I started talking about the history of the American Indians. And buffalo is a huge thing, right? It's like, and I went through a lot of this diet variation stuff, some of the things I shared with you in that video. So you have to watch the video. The wind's blowing, the buffalo are behind me. Daniel was like, the back door's open because if they charge you, people die from buffalo all the time. They're mean. And he said, if they charge you, you run and jump in the back door. So I'm doing this video, not knowing if they could be coming or not. I'm telling you, I was 10 feet from these big, huge buffalo that like literally could have charged me at any moment. So you got to see the video. So it was great.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to watch it. We'll definitely connect it to this episode. And thanks for risking your life to bring us that information, Dr. Pompa.
I even went, and part of that video, I had my son splice it on. I even went up because I read about the sheep eaters of Wyoming of the high mountains, right? And this is what they survived on, these sheep. Well, they call them sheep, but they're the bighorn sheep, right? The big, like the rams. We call them the rams. So I heard someone told me where these things are. And I went up looking for them. I found them. Now in the video, though, you see these little specks moving around. That's the sheep. That's the bighorn sheep, right? And I did a piece of the video of how, this was the mainstay of their diet, and they survived on these things in the winter, So anyways, cool stuff. We can learn from ancient cultures. Diet variation, feast-famine cycles, no doubt a part of, what we need as humans today. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and so true. And with our ancestors, with their diet variation, they were still always varying between whole real foods, whether it was buffalo and sheep and berries and twigs. They were still eating real food. So don't think the diet variation can be eating, salad to then eating, varying it up with some like French fries. So, you definitely want diet variation to still include whole real foods, because bottom line, you do need to include those foods because that's what heals your cells to decrease inflammation and ultimately help you increase your health.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. And here I am in ketosis with all that amazing snow out there. Can you see that? No, I guess not.
No, it's just all white out the window, but we believe you.
Like 4 feet of snow in the last few days. So, I better stop.
Slopes. You go out and have some fun, and thanks for breaking down diet variation. We hope that you listeners and viewers out there have a better understanding of what diet variation is, why it's so important, and some take-home strategies for how to start implementing it in your life to increase your health. So thanks as always, Dr. Pompa, and just your wealth of information and these strategies that you found to bring us to help us live healthier lives. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.